I've never really been much of a procrastinator, but I do have procrastinators around me, which is painful kind of to see when you're not a procrastinator. But I try to do the hardest thing first, and I make a game out of it. I do try to step outside my comfort zone every day, if not multiple times a day. But I make a game out of it because why not make a game
I
at
love
work?
games. Tell me more. Like, today in the Curious Builder podcast, we had Nancy Nelson-Flom from Inner Source by Stark, and it was a really delightful interview. What was really unique about her and her husband's business is we've had a lot of business owners on that are talking about selling it, transitioning it to other people in their family, but it was really fun. Nancy and Eric have actually sold their business to another company, and she's staying on. So we talk a lot about what that looks like, how you negotiate. So if you're looking to sell your business, if you're thinking about building your business so you can sell it, this is going to be an episode that you're going to want to tune into. And now, without further ado, here's Nancy. Welcome to the Curious Builder podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today, I'm joined by Nancy Nelson-Flom from Inner Source by Stark. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I feel like I've known you for a lot longer than I actually have.
Very true. I feel the same way.
You have like this magnetic personality that when people meet you, they're like, I feel like they're like, I think Nancy's like one of my best supporters, my biggest super fan. Like, because I hear all the time, like, oh, Nancy was talking about this. But I feel like as I talk to other people in our circles, they're like, oh, Nancy's just the greatest.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you for making my day. Yeah.
Well, we met originally through Mary Wozniak, who is a dear friend of our personal family, but also an interior designer. And we did a project for her 4 years ago. And you guys had an existing relationship because you're down at IMS. And that was the first time I met. You called on me. You introduced me to the C9 with Aaron Eggert and the C9 coalition. So Coalition 9, I should say. But why don't we start there? Talk a little bit about you before we get there. I'm sorry. Let's talk about your origin story, how you came to be this fixture at International Market Square in Minneapolis, and kind of your evolution to you and your husband owning a business. And then you've sold the business. Your husband has just recently retired, leaving you stranded on the island. And the reason for this longer intro is, we've had so many people on the podcast that, father, son, or husband and wife, or people that want to grow their business into something that they can sell. You're in a really unique situation because you have sold your company, but you're still working in it. And I would love to kind of go down the rabbit hole of how that happened, what that looks like for business owners that are listening to this and that are considering, how do I sell my business? Do I even have a business that is sellable? And so we'll talk about all those things. But let's go back to the beginning. How did you get into this business?
Okay. Wow. How much time do we have?
We got 10 hours. We're fine.
So my father had a floor covering company since before I was born, actually. And I was always rolling around on the carpet rolls in his store. And I met his interior designer, very eccentric woman who just passed this year, actually. And she was about 100. So she was very inspirational, and I got interested in design. Went off to college, decided my head was over my heart, and I went into health and physiology and exercise physiology. Came back from UMD, my first year of college, met with my cousin, who's kind of a mentor to me, and I said, do I follow my head or my heart? Because my heart's saying interior design. And she said, follow your heart. So I transferred down to the U with a lot of other friends that went up to Duluth, came back down to the U, and got an interior design degree. I was always interested in more commercial than residential at the time, even though my father's company was a little bit more residential oriented. So I practiced interior design, more hospitality, retail, restaurant, country club, very fun projects. It was at a height of an economic period that was up and down. And I thought, how are we ever going to have a family? My husband, back up, he's in the same field. So we were at competing architectural firms. So I thought, how are we ever going to have a family? How are we ever going to have kids? Were you
dating before that happened then?
We started dating between 14 and 15.
Years old?
Yeah, years old.
Oh, yeah, wow. Okay.
We just had our 36th wedding anniversary. Do I dare say that? Yeah.
Congratulations. That's impressive.
Thank you. So I say we've been dating for 43 years. Yeah, he's my rock for sure. So anyway, went into design. Then I realized, I think maybe I need to get into my father's company. He wanted me to be a part of it. They weren't super high on technology and more old school, and they didn't have people really going out and hustling business. It was more people came. Yeah. So I was there for 2.5 years.
Where was this location?
In Anoka. and it's actually still there, Redmond's Linoleum and Carpet Company. My dad, he passed in 2010. But anyway, so I was pregnant with my first child, and I thought, I think I can go off and do this a little bit differently, in that I had that design background. I didn't want to do design and step on our clients' toes, but I had insight into technical things that I didn't know when I was on the design side. And I thought, maybe there's a little bit of a niche here, and maybe we can do both commercial and residential, furnish and install, and make it to the designer market. So that's what Intersource set off to do in 1996. So 26 and a half years into that, after up and downs, we actually didn't start right in International Market Square. We moved into International Market Square in like 2009. We probably had our first employee maybe 2 years into it. I was the only person the first year, and then my husband joined me, left his architectural firm job. And now thinking back, I think, gosh, that was so risky, but we did it. And I do live by if you put your mind to it, you can do it. If you put your mind to it, I taught my girls that too. And now they live far, far away. So I guess it works. But anyway, so, we were approached by Stark. We have a mutual person who knew both of us, and they knew we were looking at expanding our space in IMS. And I was looking at that corner glass space. And the building actually did want it to be a national company to move in there. And I'm like, I've been paying rent for how many years? And anyway, it's a long negotiation period. But Stark approached us, and we did what should have taken 12 months, but we did it in 9 months. So we poked holes in it. We thought,
So they came, to be clear, they came to you with an offer and said, at that point, how big was your company in terms of people?
Like 12.
Okay.
Yeah. So not real large. And the installers are not part of our team. When I say 12 employees, because they're subcontracted, even though we've worked with some of them for 30 years. But anyway, so they approached us, and I was like, I thought this maybe would happen in my 60s, and maybe this isn't the right time, but you really cannot pick the time when opportunity knocks. And, we looked at the pros and cons, and really they were doing everything we wanted to do. We just didn't have the capital to do it. So, and the philosophies were in alignment, which was huge for me because I'm a very value-oriented person. So it's worked out very well.
So, and that has been a year now or 2?
It's been 2 years and 3.5 months.
So let's back up a little bit, because I want to get into the nitty gritty here on some of this. One of them is, I'm just curious, the name Intersource.
Mm-hmm.
What was the inspiration behind the name?
Yeah, so that was my husband's brainchild, and it was interior resources. At first I didn't really want to give up the design stuff. We actually started as Interspace. And I still wanted to do a little bit of space planning, and I was conflicted, right? I needed to drop that. So I did, but there was another company called Interspace, and they didn't have a good credit record, and they were getting us confused with them. So we had to change our name. I'm like, I don't want that. So
interesting.
Yeah. So it's only a few years we were Interspace, and then we became Intersource.
Yeah. What, for those, obviously listening in Minnesota that are very familiar with the International Market Square, it's this incredible building that collects, all kinds of architects and interior designers and all these wonderful resources in one place. It's kind of amazing. And it's like Saks Fifth Avenue in New York for shopping. Basically, if you're going to build a high-end home, you can just go to one place. I mean, I assume that's the design. I actually don't know that. How long has IMS been around in its capacity that we recognize it today?
Yeah, like since 1985.
That long? Wow.
They joined, so the atrium, if anyone's familiar with it, they joined 5 buildings, and you're talking to someone who knows Munsingware, because my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt all worked for Munsingware, which is what IMS now is. So Munsingware was pretty state of the art, kind of like Fruit of the Loom, if you want to. I think they started with the union suit way back when, and the atrium actually had train tracks in it to bring in the materials. It's a totally different thing. And they have the only double helix stair, I think, in the country. I don't know if I've shown that to you.
Okay. Where is it?
It's on the east side of IMS, but it's where the shifts used to get off of work and new shifts came on, and they could do it at the same time.
Oh, I got to go walk it. Because I always go up the stairs right when you walk in, right by your showroom there.
Yep. It's on the opposite side. So I'll have to show you that. It's really cool.
Oh, interesting.
So I look at that and I kind of think about, my mom coming and going. She was in payroll, but she wasn't on the sewing seamstress side. But
oh, that's wild. What a cool story. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. For over 2 years now, I've been using Adaptive. It's an incredible game changer. It's AI technology based. It helps you with bill pay. And as a builder, there's very few things that anger our subs more than not being paid on time. Well, those days are gone. Not only do you know exactly where you are, but you can pay people through your ACH channels, making draws extremely quick. With one click of a button, which used to take hours, my office staff is now able to generate a draw to the bank or to the client in literally seconds. The thing that I appreciate the most about Adaptive is their ability to keep changing. We've given them 3 or 4 feedbacks on the things that we need as builders, and within just a few months, they're rolling those things out. This is saving us hours per week and days per month in terms of our efficiency. If you're looking to upgrade your business, I'd highly recommend Adaptive. You can reach out to them at adaptive.com or listen to the Curious Builder podcast, episode 15 or episode 80, where we dive into their origin story. So, you're selling, fabrics, textiles, wood floor. I mean, kind of everything that you would lay down on a flat surface, essentially.
Yep, everything for commercial and residential spaces except for ceramic tile and stone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what percentage of your, revenue would be commercial versus residential in a normal time frame? I don't know I'd be curious to know how much that's actually changed over the years, or if it's stayed pretty steady.
It's stayed very steady, and it's about 50-50 actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably maybe because of the confidence I had being a commercial interior designer and that insight and the background that I grew up with on the residential side. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I always say that, like, loyalty is, is also bred of competence. And it's like instantly meeting you, you're like, okay, Nancy's got it going on. You can just tell. I mean, well, it's charisma, right? I mean, you're good at sales, but you're just also, you can tell even how you described yourself, like you value relationships, which I think anyone that's really in sales for the long term has to understand that this is a relationship game. And well, yes, you have to have wonderful products and all those things. We can buy a lot of products from a lot of different people, so that then you're left with the thing that makes the most difference is relationships, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, and doesn't that make the whole day interesting? I mean, every day is a different day. Every relationship's a different relationship. I love getting to know people, what they're made of. I mean, I love to get to know my clients outside of work for sure.
Yeah. In terms of being an IMS, how much has that helped you as a business?
Yep. So interestingly enough, it was 2008, the recession, when we were across the street, actually in Aldrich Square is what that building was called. And we decided to take a big plunge because we were thinking if we don't, we wanted to get a lot of legs under ourselves to be able to work in such a discriminating market. So we didn't want to move right into IMS when we first were establishing ourselves. So, we waited about 10 years before we did that. And we did it right during the recession and invested in a showroom, which was kind of scary, but it worked. So location, location, location. It does help. We no longer had to walk across the street in the rain or snow to get lunch. So IMS is good. And then we were on the north side, still a little bit, on the outskirts a little bit, not in the, I don't like drama, I like just good people. And anyway, finally now we are front and center.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, you could almost have an entire episode probably on the dynamics of IMS, I'm guessing, because what would you say, like, I mean, from a turnover rate standpoint, and this is someone who doesn't obviously go there every day like you do. I go there maybe 4 to 6 times a year, usually to visit, people I'm either going to interview on the podcast or relationship building, or obviously we use some of the, the trade partners like yourselves on certain projects. And I want to go down and see what we have down there. But how often would you say businesses are moving versus staying?
Right now, people are moving in. Our architectural firm, a design firm. I think they're looking for one large tenant on the 5th floor. I'd heard through the grapevine that someone's getting more serious. And you never know. That's never done until it's on the dotted line, right? So I think right now there's an influx, which is good to see after COVID. And the newest owners have been working to reduce the footprint of some of they had too many leases. And so that was kind of hard because some of the smaller design firms moved out and they're making spaces larger. I think that makes the building more attractive to a potential buyer. I don't necessarily think it's up for sale. I don't know. Was our business up for sale? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You just never know.
The right time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's their strategy is larger footprint.
Well, let's go to, the sale. So when you started, did you and Eric think that, this would be a business that you could sell someday?
Not necessarily, because my dad was my role model and he was 83 when he passed away, and he was actually still, attempting to work I mean, the last month, maybe not so much, but up to like 10 hours a week, he was still doing the books. So no, I mean, and I kind of visualize that. Is anyone going to buy flooring from an 83-year-old woman? And doesn't that sounds like not the greatest life, right? But not to get too woo woo, but I actually think my dad and my mom, both who have both passed, are kind of behind this whole thing because I think they know that their granddaughters are California lovers, and I think they think I'm going to need to be by their grandkids someday. So, yeah.
How old are your daughters?
25 and 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
One right now is in Brooklyn. The other one's in Santa Barbara, but the other one is moving to San Francisco from Brooklyn in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And so anyway, so you're thinking of this business, you're not really thinking about selling it as you're building it. You've got what, 26 years?
26 and a half years.
26 years. Stark comes in and says, hey, we'd like to, why you? Like, why was it that they were attracted to you exactly?
So they had a little bit of a footprint. Stark was a line within another furniture showroom in IMS. Prior to that, they did have their own showroom that closed in about 2009, about the time we moved in, actually, due to the economic recession. So really, they could see they had an influx into what we were doing because they own Prestige Mills, and they could see our prestige level. They could obviously see what their person was doing in the furniture showroom, which I thought was an odd thing that a furniture showroom took the line on. But anyway, and that was, I think, around 2018 when that happened. So they could see that happening, and they said, well, we'd like to come to Minneapolis, and you're our first choice. So I thought, well, first of all, I was a little bit put off. My husband's like, well, you've got the inside scoop. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know, but don't, coerce me or anything like that, right? I'm an independent person. So
don't tell me what to do.
Don't tell me what to do. Well, we certainly didn't want more competition, right?
Because they're basically, if you said no, I suppose you had to weigh, if we say no, they're either going to buy someone else and come in a big way. And you knew that they had been an IMS previously. So you're going to compete with them. How many other competitors would you have in the building?
Probably three. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this eliminated some competition and should allow us to grow. Yep. And so far it has some, for sure.
Yep. I mean, you went to a bigger space, and I assume that's a cash flow and a sizing thing. Plus, it sounds like the building tenant wanted a national presence, which now you have.
They did, and they didn't know that because it was my name on the lease. Originally, it was my husband and I, and then it turned into. It was a great day to go to them and say, "Guess what? You do have your national presence now."
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny. Before we go into what the expansion is, how did you, like, walking? You said it should have taken 12 months. It took 9. What did you mean by that?
Mostly the negotiation. There's a lot of negotiation with someone acquiring a business and all of the different terms. And I mean, it's a lot of.
So you've got a lawyer that you hire on your side. They have their lawyers, and you guys are just.
Their lawyers are mostly internal.
Yeah.
They would use an outside person a little bit, but yeah, it was a lengthy process, and there was a build out on top of it. We had 17 weeks to get the permit. I mean, it took a long time. It's a national, the building's on the National Historic Register. It was also somewhat COVID-ish time, so I don't know if they were pushing plans through the city as fast as we would have hoped, but things just took a lot longer, even though we'd gone back to IMS a couple of times. Can we add another month? Can we add another month? And then finally they're like, okay, we can't add any more. It's go time. So, right. I would just plan for a year if you're going to negotiate.
And I've heard that too with, let's say like a father and son or legacy transitions that just it takes, I think they even said maybe it takes a year or two to sort of work through the nuances. Like I imagine in some ways with a family, it gets a little more messy. Like you want to sell it maybe to your children, but you also realize like maybe you have children that aren't in the business, or, do you want to make money or do you want to hand it off? And so I'm sure there's a lot of, and plus a lot of people identify a lot of themselves in their business. And sometimes I would argue that's good. And sometimes I'd argue that's not so good.
Yeah.
Because we obviously are emotional people. And so sometimes that can cloud us to, good decisions. So a team, spouses, that kind of thing.
For sure. And speaking of family, we did take our daughters out to dinner when this all happened. And they happened to be in town, which was incredible. And we said, we've got some news. And right away they were like, sell.
They wanted you out west.
They weren't really out west at that point. But they, I think just through watching us at the dinner table, which now we have a little bit better separation between work and home. But back in the day when it was hard, they had to listen to a lot of the things that we were dealing with. And I think they learned a lot of grit from it, actually. But at the same time, I don't think they saw themselves in the business. They are in a creative business. They're in advertising and strategy in advertising, which kind of makes sense if you think about what we were probably talking about at the dinner table was a lot of strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. So you're going through this. I guess what were some of the lows and some of the highs during this 9 month of negotiating?
I guess one of the lows that really pops up was when I had spent months and months and months negotiating the lease. Actually, I should say Jim and Eric and I, all three of us. Jim's kind of our he was our CFO. Anyway, and got the approval from Stark to sign it. And then I think legal went up to the owners maybe a second too late or something. And they said, oh, no, we don't do 10-year leases. And I was like, I got to walk. This is my reputation on the line. So that took care of itself and everything worked out fine.
Worked out from there.
Yeah. But that was a tough one because I'm like, my reputation, like, no,
because that's what you were negotiating on.
Well, right. But they also said, okay, it's fine, sign it. So I did what they said to do. And then somebody else came in and said, oh, no, we don't do that. And I'm like, well, it's too late.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So that was probably one of the lower ones.
Right. This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 20 years, I've been using Pella windows, and I couldn't be happier to call them as a business partner, a trade partner, and someone that really supports us in our quality builds. We use wood windows and doors on every single one of our homes, and 98% of every home that I've ever built has been a Pella window. I've gotten to know their team here locally as well as nationally, and the way that they support us as a craftsman, as well as they support our homeowners with their lifelong guarantee, has actually been a game changer for me. So when people ask me who I use, I recommend Pella. If you want to hear more about Pella's story, you can listen to episode 1, where I interview Peter and Ed from Pella Northland about their journey into the Pella ownership. How long did that take before it ironed itself out?
Oh, maybe like a few days.
Okay.
Yeah. They're really good. So one of their core values is we'll figure it out.
Yep.
So they're really good at figuring things out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How, now you're staying on.
I am.
Is there a period of time, indefinite, or how does that work?
No, it's so I think it works really well how they did it. I'm not under a contract. I could get fired tomorrow. I could leave tomorrow. I think that makes us both want to please each other, really. So I still love what I do. So I'm going to be there. I don't know how long I'll be there. Well, I guess time will tell.
Right.
Yeah. And my goal is to grow the business and still work on relationships and be creative, coach our team. I'm kind of the cheerleader in the office and the beacon of positivity, put it that way. Sometimes maybe people think I'm too positive, but I think that's what gets results, right?
Yeah, there's no such thing as too optimistic. I like to operate where optimism and delusion meet.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's
a wonderful peak.
Yeah.
How you had mentioned earlier that as in terms of scaling, that partnering with a national company was going to help you with that. Mm-hmm. And I get, not that we shouldn't say other than money, because money is an important thing in terms of investment. Did it allow you to invest in people, in sales and marketing, in terms of like advertising, or like how does, like in specifics, how does mm-hmm. partnering with a national company help you grow, locally?
Yep. Great questions. So they're able to have exclusive product. About 40% of our showroom is exclusive to Stark. So no one else in town has those materials, which I think is key. And then they inventory a lot of it in Calhoun. They have 5 warehouses. So they have the capital to buy up product at, I'm sure they negotiate very hard and be able to sell it at competitive rates.
Gotcha. So they're buying in bulk and mm-hmm. it's exclusive. So
mm-hmm.
if someone wants, now that you're covering the market and you're decreasing the price, which then if you sell it, you can increase your margin as well. Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. And then they, I think it was about 2 years ago, they took, I think it was $9 million. So I'm sure it's been more since, but in stock area rugs. So, I mean, they really, really are doing incredible things. Right now, there's a big Missoni launch that's happening, and they brought in models and these great new products, both custom and in stock broadloom and area rugs. And that's going to happen actually next week. We're having an event. So very cool things that they're doing. Very cutting edge.
And how big is the territory that you'd have a non-compete in? Is it all Minnesota, upper Midwest, or?
Yeah. So we have a 50-mile radius, anyone that lives 50 miles radius of ours, and the closest Stark is Chicago. And so it's pretty far. I mean, and we do work in other cities too, because if they live here and they're working outside, we've shipped product as far as Dubai. We do installations all over the country.
And I would
So,
imagine a lot of designers here and architects as well. I mean, obviously you have a lot of design work. I know we
mhm.
have a lot of designers that are out in Sun Valley, Idaho, or
Mhm.
California, or, if people are wintering,
Yep,
they're going with an architecture firm or potentially interior designer firm here. Their
for sure.
relationships are with you.
Right.
So if they had something down in Arizona, they
Yep.
would procure it here and ship
Yep.
it there.
Yep. So how Stark works is that it's all trade preferred, and so the designers registered, so to speak, has an account, and they have only one account manager for that one account, and that account then purchases out of our location. So it is all relationship based and location based. But if there's somebody in Iowa and they're not working with Chicago, we're going to work with them, right?
Right.
So it's relationship based.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. How so Eric, you mentioned
Yeah.
he's retired.
Yeah.
What's it like when you sell and you're like, I'm really excited to keep working, and Eric's like, I'm out, mic drop.
Well, you know what? It's been interesting. I think I will admit I have the more fun job. I think I'm in the right seat. I love people. I love getting to know people, figuring people out, helping people. I think that's pretty much why I was born, is to help people. And so I love what I do. He had the harder side, he dealt with the problems and
What was his what
resolution.
was his role?
Well, it changed over time a little bit, because we did have an estimator or not. He was kind of back into estimating. He did do the full build out of the space because he has an architectural background. So he was, just invaluable during that whole process. We're like back doing our design jobs. I mean, he knew exactly what to do. But really, really long hours. I would say while we were growing the business, he probably worked like 14-hour days for like 15 years. And so he was burnt out, ready for something different. Not sure what that something different is yet. I think he's just realizing, we had to say no to so many things that we're just in this transition phase of, actually, I'm getting a little bit tired socially right now. We had like 12 days in a row. I said, Eric, if you would have been working, would you be doing all of this? And he said, no. And I said, but I'm working and I'm doing. He goes, yeah, but you're so social.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I assume you would describe yourself as an extrovert.
I used to say kind of in the middle. I mean,
Okay.
it kind of depends upon the room. I think I'm in the middle.
Hmm.
Yeah. But lately I feel like I'm getting a little bit more extroverted.
More extroverted.
I get a lot of energy from people.
That's where I was going with this
Yeah.
question.
And
Yeah.
I don't need a lot of downtime.
Yep.
Whereas Eric does need a little bit more downtime and transition time.
It's funny you described yourself as in the middle, because you just described as
I
an
know,
extrovert.
I know.
I get my energy from people.
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm moving more that way. I
Mhm.
haven't always been that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was much more of a wallflower when I was younger.
If you could go back, I mean, obviously nobody gets a chance, but it's how, we have a lot of young entrepreneurs that are listening to the podcast. And yeah, I think we can all learn from each other. What are some things that you would have done differently? And I know
Yeah.
we won't get an undo, but what are some things that you either learned from a difficult time, or some things that, what I would have done that differently? And maybe
Mhm.
some things that, we did this at that time and it turned out really well, but we didn't really know it was going to go so well at that time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think overarching, I don't think I had the highest confidence sometimes, and for no good reason, really. Like if I would have worked with a coach maybe at a younger age and developed that, maybe everything would have springboarded faster, because now I feel like I have a lot more, and I don't know if it's because I was acquired or what. I'm older, wiser, I have a lot more experience under my belt, but there was that imposter syndrome, right? And that is something that is a real thing. And I talk to people in a lot of industries and for all different ages, and obviously from C9, and a lot of people have it. And right now I feel like I finally don't have it, which feels good. But
I would imagine some of that is personality. Some of that is it's like this interesting cocktail, right? Like some of it is your upbringing. Some of it would be your circumstance. A lot of it is age and wisdom. Like you are better at your craft.
mhm.
I think back to like earlier in my career, and we build a better home now, But I mean, arguably, we still used really good people. But what's changed? Confidence.
Yeah.
It's like, I love the line that when people challenge you on your price, position, you're like, I don't really need the practice. I'm a professional. I'm good at what I do,
Yeah.
and we deserve to be paid for what we do. But like, even like how you deliver that, like it takes there's some maturity that has to happen
Mhm.
for you to sort of believe your own messaging,
Oh, for sure.
and there's the whole, the fake it till you make it. And there's a lot, and I think any entrepreneur has probably been there, that I prioritize the figured out factor, probably more that and communication,
Mhm.
probably more than any other single asset. Because, I like that you said that one of the things that you loved about Stark was that they had the figured out factor. Because,
Mhm.
even for employees, it's like we are constantly bombarded with fires and things that we, no day really goes as planned.
No.
And so, and honestly, that's what attracts me to it, the
Mhm.
variety. And
Exactly. No 2 days are ever alike.
right,
You can't get bored.
right.
There's just no way. There's no monotony.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever been bored in 20 years.
I have not been bored. I think the last time I was bored, I was like 13 years old. Well, it was
Do
like
you
before I met Eric, right?
can you relate to this? Do you remember being younger, like go way back, and you're like, I'm thinking the only place I can think about this would be maybe like, high school or college or whatever, and you'd think like, oh man, the days are so. I wish this day would just end. Now, as an adult, I wish each day was like 72 hours,
I
because there's
know.
so much I want to do. And I have a young family, and I love what I
Yes.
do business wise, and you have all these passions and hobbies. And anyway, it's just funny. The more you talk to people, the more you realize, man, you're very aware of how short time is.
Yeah.
Um,
It also means though that you get into a flow during your day, which means you're doing the right thing, right? Like you walk into work and you think, I've got this whole day in front of me, and all of a sudden it's 5 o'clock and other people are getting ready to walk out the door. I'm like, I feel like I just got here, right? What did I do today again?
what are your, and before I share mine, I'll let you share yours. What are some scheduling hacks, principles, like walk me through like a successful day for you in terms of how you manage it.
Yeah. Well, I do plan my meetings pretty far in advance.
Like what,
Um,
weeks, months, years?
Not years. I would say, some of them are, it depends upon what's going on, but it could be a week to 6 weeks out,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So there could be 2 meetings a day. There could be 5 meetings a day, which would be on the heavy side. Some of our internal though, because I do one-on-ones with our team. So there's 11 of us currently, and so that takes up time, right? But yeah, a successful day would be something that's pretty well planned out. I do have a high integrity factor, so if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So that's probably good business acumen, anyway. But yeah, just one where I'm like juggling quite a few things at once because I love that. I've got my email going, I've got people coming to my door, I've got my phone doesn't ring as much anymore. That must be technology, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think back in the day, how many like messages I would get and phone calls, and I'd be on the phone all the time. But I do love it still. I mean, that's the traditional side of me, maybe, is that I do love when I can catch people on the phone live because it's much more efficient if you are trying to solve something, that not that back and forth with email.
It's funny you say that. I think I'm 44, just to put a marker out there
Hmm.
for age. And where I'm going with this is I feel like the younger generations, and I can be falling to this too, a quick email or whatever. And email is nice for getting a lot of people in
Hmm.
one thing,
Yep.
right? I have actually started, and I need to continue to do a better job of this because my habit is email. But if there's ever a problem, I just call someone. I'll be
Yep.
in an
If,
ops
if
meeting
there's
sometime,
gray.
and I'll just be like, "Have you dealt with this?" I'll be talking to someone. They're like, "No." I'm like,
Hmm.
"What is preventing you from solving this?"
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't. I need to get a better job as a leader, not just to solve the problem, but in this particular situation, somebody's not responding to that person, so it's
Hmm.
not there. So I'm like, all right, let's do it right now. And it's like you solve it, you move on. I tend to be a little bit like ER doc. It's like I
Hmm.
want to deal, I want to stabilize whatever the
Hmm.
situation like immediately. Then I don't have to then hand it off to someone else and say, you know, take it from here and go on, because
Yep.
I just want to put out that fire and move to another one.
Yep.
I have found where I was going with this question is just recently, I do love lists and I love
Hmm.
crossing off my list. And so I have found that every Monday, I'll keep an hour of time or whatever the time is, and I'll plan out the week. And I'll have my schedule out, several weeks, a month and a half, whatever it is. But really, it's like, there's just four. What are the four things you want to do this week? And then I'll have, a bunch of little other things. Inevitably, the procrastinator in me often does all the things but those top four. And I know it's like, I think there's a book that I just read called eat this frog first. It's basically like do the
Oh.
hardest thing, or like,
Mhm.
nobody wants to eat a frog, I think is the point. But like if you eat the frog, you can eat something nicer later, I think
Mhm.
is the concept essentially. But I have found like even today, I have 4 things on my list and I got 2 of them done because I came in today and I actually had 2 recordings today. And I said, you know what?
Oh.
I have to get this thing done because I have a deadline for this. I was borrowing some money on a project, and it's like if I don't get this done, like I needed the cooker to be hot enough
Yeah.
to make me do it. Anyway, I wish I could just. Those are the 4 things, and then just concentrate on. Don't do a single item till you get those done.
Mhm.
I haven't found the perfect balance on that, but that's kind of where I was going with this question is like, how do you prioritize,
Yeah.
the hottest iron versus the 100 other ones you have to deal with too?
So I think I've gotten better at this as I've gotten older, and I've never really been much of a procrastinator, but I do have procrastinators around me, which is painful kind of to see when you're not a procrastinator. But I try to do the hardest thing first and I make a game out of it. I do try to step outside my comfort zone every day, if not multiple times a day. But I make a game out of it because why not make a game
I
at
love
work?
games. Tell me more. Like, tell me, like, give
It's
me an
just in my
example.
head completely. It's like, oh, Nancy, you can do that today. You could even do that, and you could even do it more. Challenge yourself. You can do this. So it's a little bit of self talk,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I actually think just really good things come of it. I mean, my positive energy just gets more positive. My confidence gets higher. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think for the positivity, like my morning is when I'm the strongest.
Same.
I usually work out early, so usually about 9 to 10, I am just flying high. Whether it's the coffee, the workout in the morning, whatever it is, and I'm trying to rearrange my schedule so that because I get energy from people,
Hmm.
to meet with people in the afternoons, but do all my work, if you will,
Yep.
while I have all that energy in the morning. The problem is it's also my most creative time. So I come up with so many good ideas in the morning. The problem is like once you get a good idea, you're like, I got to pull the string and keep going. And so that's what happens to my
Yep.
list.
You
Is
go
my
off on a
list starts out
tangent.
at 10, but I have this idea, I latch onto it, or you and I maybe have a conversation like that's a great idea. Now like I'm in the moment, I'm in the flow. I'm like, I'm going to see how far this goes. And then before you know it, I'm at the end of the day. And that entire list is now I've solved 800 other things that I
Right.
wasn't even planning on addressing. But
Right.
that's usually
Yeah.
that's my ADHD and overdrive where it really
Right.
loves the newness and the variety.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think as you get older, you probably get a little bit more, um, I don't know, if managing your time, it seems to get a little bit easier, but it also might mean too, I mean, there's a lot of headspace change from going from owner to being an employee. It wasn't very comfortable, actually. I didn't know what to do. I did have some additional time because we weren't writing COVID policy. We weren't trying to figure out our website, all of those things.
So there's a lot of freedom
A
there.
lot of freedom. And that wasn't very comfortable for me at first. Now I'm liking it. So now I feel like I probably can manage my time a little bit more and stick to a plan. Whereas I think before it was just like, you're right, you're going here, there, and everywhere. 1,000 places. When you own a business, you have to have your head in so many places. So I do think there's a difference there.
Lake Society magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
Did you find I've talked about this a lot on the podcast of what's worked for me? And I had some good role models around me in terms of, whether it's your family, that is what, is sort of it's interesting because your husband was a co-owner. And so now you're
Mm-hmm.
at the dinner table, creating or iterating or talking about, the thing that you like. And so that'd be a little bit different. not that my wife doesn't want to talk about it, but usually at night it's like, we have a young family. So it's
Yeah.
like, from the moment I walk in the door, the kids are, bombarding me,
Yeah.
keep them out of mom's hair while dinner's finished. And, you have the,
Mhm.
3 hours of family bedtime routine and all that kind of stuff. And then you're just worn out. So in some ways it's
Completely.
been easy for me not to work at home or work at night because there's no time.
Yeah.
And then I'm just exhausted because I'm, get up early. So it's like,
Right.
I've that has worked really well for me
Yep.
personally. How did you establish boundaries? Because it sounds like you worked a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
how did you manage that?
So it's interesting. So my mom was aging too. So she had a disability. So I had my mom, not 100% of the time, but there was that aspect, and then the kids, and then the business, and then Eric and I both in it. So when I said he worked all those hours for those many years while we were raising the kids, it was like he had this double shift kind of situation where he'd come into the office about 9:30 and work till 5, do family time, dinner, go back to the office till like 2 or 3 in the morning. It
Oh,
was so hard.
that's rough.
Yeah. But then I had to figure out how to delegate, right? Because if I had to do my mom, the kids, the business, I had to let things go. I had to let my perfectionism tendency, like I had to let go of control. And that actually isn't something that's easy to do. But once you do it, I think that's when you grow personally and professionally.
The delegation.
Yeah. Once you
Yep.
can let go of control.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And empower other people.
Yep.
It took me many years to figure that out. And I'm actually witnessing some things around me right now where some people that are so conscientious, they're seeking approval. And I was so happy yesterday. And actually I went to the employee to tell her I share my story on the culture call with Chad. Chad's the CEO of Stark, and a bunch of other people yesterday because we came up with a plan that we were going to have to rearrange all these things because this new Missoni launch is happening, and we've got these wide samples. They have to go in the 5-foot wings. But anyway, long story short, she's like, you know what? I know we had this down, but I think we have to go here, 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 and here, and do this for this reason and all of that. And I was like, hallelujah, thank you. So she's showing leadership by me letting go of leadership.
So this is a good question. I think that I'm very interested in your response. How do you can lead by example, and you can just lead by being yourself. Leading by intention. People talk about leaders all the time. Like, I guess I don't know how to describe it. Like, I know I'm a leader because I own the company and I have all these ideas, but like, I don't strive to be a leader. Like, I don't wake up in the morning and be like, I'm a leader. Like little kids are like, oh, dad, you're the boss. Like, no, my clients are my boss. Right. That kind of thing.
Right.
But, and then there's like, I think of those in like bigger corporations that are like, I'm the leader of a company. They're very intentional about like how they're leading their team. Have you played around with those two thought processes, and how do you empower others, deliberately versus just being kind of like a good human being? Because like, I sometimes don't know the difference between just being genuine, like, hey, a great job, you're doing amazing, like just being very, I'm also a very
authentic,
emotional person, so it's very
Yep.
easy for me to give compliments.
Absolutely.
I'm not doing it duplicitly, or I'm not doing it with an agenda. I'm just doing it because like, that's just part of probably how my mom raised me, so I see her doing it. So
Exactly.
I guess my question is as a leader, are there two paths, or what paths do leaders take if they want to empower their team?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I wouldn't have said I was a very great leader, 15 years ago. And we actually hired a leadership coach, and we had a team. We had a group of people, let's put it that way. And we needed to get a team of people, right? And I needed to be a stronger leader to be able to do that. And so both my husband and I were coached by this guy. And then we had several people on our team get coached as well. And there was a little bit of attrition in the team. Some people didn't fit the new model moving forward. And what came out of it is the best team. I'm so grateful to our team right now. We're planning this event next week, and I just shot off an email like, can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm like, I am so grateful that I said, boy, having an event really takes a village, but I'm so grateful that we have the best village there is. So yeah, I mean, so it doesn't, some people probably have all the natural skills, but you really need to think about being the beacon of positivity, complimenting people, being empathetic, being authentic. And there's a lot to leadership. There's a lot of great books, actually. And communication, that's one thing that's really interesting. I'm sure you're familiar with DISC and all of that. there's a book out there that's just a simplified version of DISC, but it assigns animals. Well, you probably know
Oh,
because of C9, right?
C9. Yeah.
So now I've shared that with Chad Stark, and he mentioned yesterday on the call, like, because someone said you got to be able to read the room, and he goes, "Oh, Nancy like puts animals to people." I'm like, well, time out. There's more to that description, but I truly think you really know how to approach. Like, I can't go to Jim or Don with a disorganized idea in my head, but I could go to Krista with a disorganized idea, and she'd have fun with me, like trying to figure it out with me. So, I mean, it's just you have to know how you need to approach certain people to get certain things done, and that didn't happen overnight. So,
Are you mostly yellow red?
I am. I don't know if it's color.
Well, no, the
I'm
desk you
lion.
mentioned desk.
Yeah,
Desk.
I'm lion monkey.
Okay.
I'm D,
Okay.
but I've got enough monkey in me to. What's good is this latest book after the book that you probably the Make a Difference book.
Yes.
There's a book called Crossing the Line now, and it talks about how you need to be able to do task and people. And I'm lucky that I've got both of those as they're not both as strong. Task is higher for me, and then people second. But the people that are both in task or both in people, they need to learn how to cross the lines to be effective leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting.
Have you seen people within your organization become leaders?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And how do you see other people respond to that within the organization?
Yeah, I think it raises the bar, right? People think about, well, maybe I need to step it up a little bit. Yeah, that's the kind of group I have though right now. I mean, I haven't always had that kind of a group. There's no one toxic right now. So
that's I
beautiful.
Amen. Yeah, it's amazing when your team, sometimes at the time you're like, oh, this is very difficult. And then as time passes, you're like, wow, that was a major blessing.
Yes.
And sometimes I've mentioned this many times in the podcast, Disney has a very famous phrase, excuse me, where it's slow to hire. Fast to hire. Oh my word. Slow to hire, fast to fire. And I'm the opposite. I've always been the opposite because I get so attached to people.
Yes.
And
that was
so
our biggest mistake.
It's really blinded me to, and so we're not hiring per se this second, but the writing's on the wall. I think, this last year's been very slow, but I do think we're going to see a rebound. And so rather than wait until we have a need and then going to find someone, then you're going to always be behind. We're going to, for a small company, big companies do this all the time, but we're actually reaching out to try to identify a few people now for roles that we think we're going to need in the next 6 to 10 months. And then just interview them. But I told my team, I'm not interviewing anybody anymore. You decide if you want to hire this person, because I have proven that that's not a good role for me. And they all laugh like, hey, we think we're pretty good.
Yeah, right? You just slammed us.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
Yeah, it wasn't quite like that. But anyway, so I'm curious. It's more of an
Yeah.
experiment. I'm going to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And see what the team says about it.
I always like the team to weigh in. The last hire, actually, this is kind of interesting. So I initially interviewed them, and then corporate interviews them. So now I've got someone to kind of catch me if I'm falling the wrong way, because I love to believe everything that everyone tells me, right? Because I'm so optimistic.
Yep. Oh, I've been there.
So, and then we did a round robin where I just said, okay, we're going to be sitting out here, bring a couple questions you'd like to ask the person. Doesn't matter what they are. Even if two people ask the same question, doesn't matter. And they just came and then they'd go back to the office. So they'd sit with us for like 20 minutes and talk. They'd go back to the office, get the next person. And that was really, really good. And the person coming in got to then understand the culture and the type of people. So they knew what they were. So I think it develops a comfort zone. So first day isn't so scary, right? Or the second day or third day or the first week or two. You really kind of get to know how people operate and how people interact with one another before you even go to the office, which worked out really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, actually. Let's talk a little bit about Coalition 9. You introduced me to Aaron, and he and I love his energy. I think I think I came into the first time I really met you, I was in your showroom.
Yeah.
When I meet people for the first time, that's usually it's like Red Bull and, sugar at one time. Like I just usually, I don't know, that's my not self-defense. That's just how I present, with a ton of energy. And you had mentioned something like, whoa, you remind me of Aaron. And so I've laughed at, I call myself Aaron with hair. And, and I've had him on the podcast, and I really like what he's doing. I love everything about what he is. But how long had you been a C9er before you had made that recommendation?
Yeah. So we were the experienced leaders, it's called. I'm like, oh, the old people. But there's some youngsters in our team too. They're like maybe pushing 40, maybe even. So it was 2000, let's see, 2020.
Okay.
So about 4 years ago.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. What I love about or for those that aren't aware of what we're talking about, we've had Aaron Eggert on the podcast, and he has a peer-to-peer group, or a business agnostic peer-to-peer group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's always kind of said that you should have one group where it's your peers. So in my case, it's other builders, and then you should have one group that has, people from all over
Mixture.
industry. Yep. And you just get a lot of great energy, a great format. And I love everything that they're doing, about that. And, we've taken some of the ideas that we've gotten from the Curious Collective, which is something we do with designers. Actually, tomorrow is our first design collective.
Fun.
And I've talked to Aaron about some of this stuff, like, hey, if we go into other states, what does this look like? And he's been a, good, mentor slash, advisor, like, hey, this works, this doesn't work. And it's just interesting. I just love getting people together.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting. And I love that he loves to bring people together. But what I really like about his group is that you can't really get in unless you're invited by a current member, which is really, and his comment on that is that's how you promote good culture. That's how and so it'd be sort of interesting if you had a business that was big enough where, the people you hired had to be referred by someone in your own company. Anyway, just, I don't know how often that happens in corporate America or things like that.
Yeah. I don't know. What I do love about, I was in WPO for 10 years. It's all women. Loved that. Decided to take about a year off, and then Aaron approached me. And so it was really interesting to have only 9 people. My WPO group was like 24 people at the table, right? It's a lot harder to be vulnerable with that big of a group. So Coalition 9 is 9 people. It's very easy. It's a mixture of men and women. And I love a 40-something-year-old guy telling me what I need to hear as a 58-year-old woman. So, yeah, I love the energy. It's fun. We have so much fun together. We just did a cold plunge right next door here, or that way.
Oh, at CSU.
Yeah, we did. And just, it's business. I'm going to see one of them tonight. We're going to 20th anniversary next week for some. I mean, we do support one another in a lot of ways. So it's very cool.
Well, funny. We're doing, have you seen the stuff we posted about Sauna Camp?
Oh, I was just reading about it out there.
Yeah. So we're doing, and I forgot that they had just opened up the cold plunge down the street. I'll have to go check it out. Someone else told me about it. It was right next to a CrossFit gym that we have here, but it's going to be end of January, and it's kind of an extension of the collectives. I want to get the builder, designer, architect collective, and then anyone in our industry that's interested. Lake Minnewaska, right up here in Chanhassen, is you can rent out the camp. I think 60 people is the max, and they have 8 barrel saunas. And we actually have someone leading us through like breath work.
Oh, cool.
And then after you go into the cold water, and you can use your breath to sort of regulate your fight response.
Yeah.
And then you do the sauna and back and forth. But it's basically going to be mostly everyone in the construction, design, and architecture field here locally.
Super fun.
So
that's great.
You'll have to come.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to.
I'll see if I can get Aaron to come.
Yeah, that would be fun. He's all over that kind of thing.
Oh, for sure he is.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. What you'd mentioned, there's a few mantras that you have sort of subscribed to, that kind of help either get you through the day or kind of help, guide as a guiding principle. What are some of those?
Yeah, I mean, I just try to not let little things knock me down, or grab someone real quick that I trust and, can vent a little bit to them so that I can bring myself up right away, because things used to knock me down and like keep me down for a little bit. That's not good for anybody. But I do have this nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's my dad. I used to go to him with all these things, and I tend to talk fast, and he didn't really like that so much. And at the end, he'd always say the same thing. I'm thinking, did you even hear what I said? But nothing ventured, nothing gained. Obviously, you can do it if you put your mind to it. Just challenging yourself to go outside your comfort zone every day. And then another thing I just recently read in a book was how this author took the word grit and made something up out of it. And I really liked it. The G is get over yourself. The R is run to the hard things. The I is inspire others. And the T is take time. And so I shared that with our CEO just the other day, and I'm just internalizing that. And I think that that's really helpful, because grit is something that has come over the years. I didn't always have grit, but do feel that if you do those things, that it's easier to implement.
I like that a lot. Get over yourself, run to, what was it?
Do the hard things.
Run to the hard things.
Inspire others.
Inspire others.
And take time.
Take time. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a pretty good mantra right there.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Well, you obviously strike me as someone who reads a lot of books. Are you a listener are you a walker? Are you exercise? Like where do you consume this knowledge at what time of day? I'm always interested to see how people, get these inspirations, because then we show it up and bring it to work, and it kind of helps, define what we're doing.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not a listener because I live only like 7 minutes from my work.
Oh, nice.
And I tend to walk or exercise with friends. So I have to do it on my own time on the weekends or something like that. Or if we go out of town, then I'll get some good reading in planes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'd like to ask that and what are you reading right now?
Well, I'm reading that Crossing the Line, and I'm about to read for my book club a book about joy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So nothing too heavy right now.
It's funny because you're just thinking grit, and an acronym comes about joy, which was Jesus first, others second, yourself last. Mm-hmm. And just in terms of like layering of principles, and whether you're a Christian or not, you could still see how that would apply to getting some balance. But I'm even thinking here, like, this is reverse order of grit. Get over yourself is sort of putting yourself last. Mm-hmm. And run to the anyway, there's only so much. I love acronyms. It's like some people hate them. I
love them too. I'll be sending you as many as I can find.
Yeah,
for you.
Send me a text. Oh man, I'll eat them up. I'll post them all day long. So I love that. Great. When you're outside of work, how do you recharge?
Well, I love live music. Both my husband and I, that's actually how we met. And we still, like, even tonight, I think we're going to go see the new Standards at Mears Park. So we love live music, and we love to learn. We are just like sponges with whether it's current events, what's going on in the world, how something works, how we need to, where we need to go next. I don't know. Our kids are very inspirational because, like I said, one's moving right now from Brooklyn to San Francisco, and it wasn't necessarily, it was like a 4-week notice. Her boyfriend got this job in San Francisco, and she's got a remote job, and she turned down a job that wasn't remote like 3 weeks prior. And I thought, wow, if you would have taken that, you wouldn't be going to San Francisco. So, just learning, trying to keep up with our kids. These young ones are very, they're further along in a lot of ways than we were at that age. Yeah.
I think the world is so much bigger and smaller. It's bigger in the sense that like the whole world is your oyster. You can go anywhere, but it's smaller in the sense that we're connected in a way that, the communication is so quick, and how we can enter into people's lives is sort of instantaneous. And you have these relationships, with people, there's someone that on LinkedIn, we comment on each other's stuff all the time. He lives in Australia.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, that's so cool. That's normal now.
That's great. And then I have to exercise. I have to exercise a lot because just get your head in the right space.
Yeah. And what is the exercise for you?
So I do these interval strength cardio classes at Lifetime. I go to yoga at Lifetime. Sometimes it's Pilates. Sometimes it's bar. Sometimes I'm on the Stairmaster.
Yeah.
Sometimes
those are like the GTX
weights.
Classes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
They're fun. Yeah. Very, very good for an aging body, right?
Yeah, that's good for everybody. I'm a huge fan of it. Is that a morning thing?
It's a morning thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the weekends I'll go a little bit later, but it's still morning time.
And how about your husband?
Bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a biker. We've got lots of bikes in our garage.
Road bike or mountain?
He's more mountain, but he has a single speed. He has a gravel bike. He's got a fat tire bike. He has a mountain bike.
So he's at Theodore Worth, because that's pretty close to where you live, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And then he goes on road rides with friends, usually every Wednesday night.
Okay.
So they'll maybe put 30 miles on or something like that, but on a weekend it might be longer. So
Interesting.
Yeah. He's always been a biker. He was a BMXer. I was like a super fan.
Oh,
back
funny.
in the
Back
day.
when you're 14, 15, listening to live music. And Eric, you're so awesome on a BMX.
I know.
Does he still have a little BMX? Can he still twirl it around?
He still has his hutch hanging in our garage.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's all chrome. It's really cool. He had great design taste even back then.
Right. I'd love to see his bike collection. I've recently, just with training for this trail race I've been doing, and just finished it. But the road biking is kind of the you run 4 days a week, you got to do a few other things. But now I'm kind of into a few people actually in the building world here like to mountain bike. And so I'm starting to get into mountain biking a little bit, and I enjoy it. It's just like, how many sports and hobbies can you have at one time?
Well, I'm impressed that you can have hobbies when you have a business, because that's kind of what we gave up a lot when we.
It's, for me personally, it's extremely important.
It is.
I'd be happy to give up, an extra job, because at the end of the day, we have one life to live. And and it's not that I haven't worked more than I should, but I think I had really good role models around me, and specifically with my mom and dad, growing up and seeing it. It was a different time though too. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't email and cell phones. And so, I mean, we had but what was unique is we had the business, or mom and dad had a business on our property. So they had an office. So dad would always come home for dinner, but then he would literally walk, 50 feet, and clients would meet him at the office. So for us, we just thought that was normal. Like, come to find out, no, I mean, if you have to drive, it's nice proximity. It sounds like you live 7 minutes. I mean, that's pretty sweet. Right now I live 45 minutes away. I'm in Minneapolis. So for me, it's like, coming back to the office after I leave, it's just never going to happen.
No.
So I do envy those that have a short commute to their office, from a running and biking and exercise standpoint. It'd be really nice to be able to, I could bike here, but there's no shower. So
that's why we do love theater with work. Cause I mean, even all the walking, the hiking, the biking, it's cross country skiing. It's really convenient.
Well, your location off of 394 on the west side, even from the office, you can get anywhere very quickly. It's an incredible access and hub. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You're welcome.
Have all your contact information in the show notes. And until next time, thanks again.
Thank you so much. It was so fun.
Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.